The ice-cold water hit me like 1,000 needles. I gasped, my small body convulsing as the shock drove the air from my lungs. The bucket clattered to the marble floor beside me, and I heard Merrick's cruel laugh echo through the grand hallway of the Vane estate. The silver wasn't polished properly, he sneered, looming over me like a giant. His expensive shoes were inches from my face as I knelt in the spreading puddle. You're lucky to have a roof over your ungrateful head, girl. I kept my eyes down, watching water drip from my dark hair onto the floor I'd spent 3 hours scrubbing that morning. My fingers were raw from the cleaning solutions. My knees ached from kneeling. I was 10 years old, and this was my life. Look at her, Brianni's shrill voice cut through the air. Merrick's wife stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble. Pathetic little orphan, your parents would be ashamed. At the mention of my parents, something twisted in my chest. They died 6 months ago in what everyone called an accident. A car crash on a rainy night. But sometimes, late at night when I was locked in the tiny servant's room they'd given me, I wondered if it really was an accident. Before the crash, I'd lived in this house as family. After it, I became the maid. Brianni kicked my bucket of cleaning supplies, sending brushes and rags scattering across the hallway. Clean this mess up. And when you're done, the guest bathrooms need scrubbing. We have important people coming tomorrow. They walked away, still laughing. I heard them discussing dinner plans, expensive steaks, and imported wine. I'd be lucky to get table scraps tonight. I gathered my supplies slowly, my hands shaking from cold and something else. Rage, maybe, or despair, I wasn't sure anymore. My name is Astrid, and the people currently laughing at my tears think I'm a helpless orphan. They have no idea I'm the woman who signed the deeds to every house they own. But I didn't know that yet, not consciously anyway. That knowledge would come later that night, when the fever dreams started and my real memories began to surface. For now, I was just a broken little girl, scrubbing floors in a house that should have been mine. The fever started after dinner, or rather, after I'd cleaned up everyone else's dinner while my stomach growled with hunger. Brianni had forgotten to save me any food again. It was her favorite punishment. I made it to my tiny room before the chills hit. The space had once been a storage closet, barely big enough for the narrow cot they'd shoved in there. No windows, no heat, just 4 walls and a single bare light bulb. I collapsed onto the thin mattress, pulling the threadbare blanket around my shaking shoulders. My head pounded. My skin felt like it was on fire. I must have fallen asleep, because suddenly I wasn't in that closet anymore. I was standing in a grand office, sunlight streaming through tall windows, but I wasn't looking through a child's eyes. I was taller, older. My hands, wrinkled and spotted with age, rested on a mahogany desk. "Sign here, Mrs. Vane," a lawyer said, sliding papers toward me. I watched my elderly hand pick up an ornate fountain pen. The signature flowed across the page, Eleanor Vane. Eleanor. The name echoed through my mind like a bell. I was Eleanor Vane. I built this empire from nothing. I designed every room of this estate. I invested every dollar. I created the fortune these parasites were now squandering. More memories flooded in, overwhelming me. I saw myself, Eleanor, as a young woman, arguing with bankers who didn't want to lend to a female entrepreneur. I saw myself designing the hidden vault beneath the estate, a place to protect my wealth from greedy relatives. I saw myself growing old, watching my children become corrupted by money and privilege. I saw myself writing a will, hiding it in the vault along with the real fortune, leaving only enough liquid assets to test my heirs. And I saw myself dying, disappointed in all of them, hoping that somehow, someday, someone worthy would find what I'd hidden. I gasped awake, my child's body drenched in sweat. The memories were still there, crystal clear. I remembered everything, 80 years of Eleanor Vane's life, layered on top of my own 10 years as Astrid. I sat up slowly, my small hands trembling. I knew where the vault was, I knew the codes. I knew the secrets this house held. Most importantly, I knew that Merrick and Brianni had no legal right to any of this. Eleanor's will, my will, had specific conditions, and they'd failed every single one. I pressed my hand against the cold wall of my closet room and smiled for the first time in 6 months. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was broken. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, I moved through my chores with new purpose. Every task Brianni assigned me was an opportunity to observe, to gather information, to plan. "Astrid," Brianni's voice shrieked from the sitting room, "get in here now." I hurried in, keeping my eyes appropriately downcast. She stood there with her arms crossed, flanked by 2 of her society friends, women dripping in jewelry and judgment. "I've lost my diamond earring," Brianni announced dramatically. "The one my mother gave me, it's priceless." I waited, knowing what was coming. "You cleaned my room this morning," she continued, her voice rising. "What did you do with it?" "I didn't take anything, Aunt Brianni," I said quietly, using the title they'd insisted on after my parents died. Calling them family while they treated me like dirt was another one of their little cruelties. "Search her," Brianni commanded. One of her friends patted down my simple dress, the same one I'd worn every day for 3 months because they wouldn't buy me new clothes. Of course, they found nothing. "Then you hid it somewhere," Brianni hissed. "Find it or you don't eat for a week." I nodded and left the room, but I wasn't worried, because Eleanor's memories told me exactly what was happening. Brianni was a drunk. She hid bottles all over the house, expensive vodka in places she thought no one would look. Her liquor stash locations were burned into Eleanor's memory from years of quiet observation. And if I knew Brianni, and I did, both from this life and the last, she'd hidden the earring herself to create drama, then found it later to make herself look like the forgiving guardian. But she'd made a mistake. I walked straight to the library, to the hollow bottom of a decorative urn that Eleanor had always known about. I reached in and pulled out not just the diamond earring, but also a bottle of premium vodka. I carried both back to the sitting room. "I found your earring, Aunt Brianni," I said sweetly, holding it up. Then I set the vodka bottle on the coffee table. "It was in the urn, with this." Brianni's face went white, then red. Her friends stared at the bottle, then at her, then at each other with raised eyebrows. That's not," Brianni stammered. "Oh, Brianni," one of the women said with false sympathy. "We had no idea you were struggling." The gossip would be all over their social circle by evening. Brianni's reputation as the perfect society wife would take a hit. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I left the room before Brianni could recover enough to punish me, but I caught Merrick's eye as I passed the doorway. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Suspicion, maybe. Good. That night, I pressed my ear against the heavy door of Merrick's study. They thought I was locked in my room, but Eleanor had installed secret passages throughout this house. I knew every single one. "We're bleeding money," Merrick's voice was stressed, angry. "The business investments are failing. The properties are mortgaged. We have maybe 3 months before the banks start seizing assets." "What about the vault?" That was Brianni, her voice sharp despite the afternoon's humiliation. "Your grandmother's legendary vault, if we could just open it." "I've tried everything." Merrick slammed his fist on the desk. "The damn thing won't open without the matriarch's key, and no one knows where Eleanor hid it before she died." "What about the girl?" a third voice asked. I recognized Leland, their sleazy lawyer. "Astrid's mother was Eleanor's favorite grandchild. Maybe Eleanor told her something." "The brat was only 9 when her mother died," Merrick scoffed. "She doesn't know anything." "Still," Leland mused, "it might be worth persuading her to remember." The way he said, persuading made my skin crawl. "There's another problem," Merrick continued. "Coulter is coming tomorrow. He's calling in the loan. If we don't have at least $2 million to give him, he'll seize the estate." $2 million, Brianni gasped. "We don't have $2 million. "I'm aware," Merrick snapped. "That's why we need that vault. Eleanor supposedly stashed the real family fortune down there. Enough to save us 10 times over." I smiled in the darkness. They were right. The vault did contain Aliner's real fortune. Dozens of rare paintings, gold bars, stock certificates worth hundreds of millions, everything she'd built and hidden away. But they'd never open it, because the key they were looking for wasn't a physical object. It was me. Aliner had designed the vault to open only for her biometric signature, her handprint, her retinal scan, her voice. And through some twist of fate or divine comedy, I had her exact DNA signature. I was her reincarnation in the most literal sense. The vault would open for me, and no one else. I crept back through the passage to my closet room, my mind racing with possibilities. Merrick and Brianni were desperate. Desperate people made mistakes, and I would be there to catch every single one. The next day, Leland returned with a stack of documents. I was serving tea during the meeting, playing the role of the silent, invisible servant while I memorized every word they said. "These offshore accounts are untraceable," Leland assured Merrick, spreading papers across the desk. "You can funnel the remaining liquid assets here, account number 847-923 HKX, and by the time anyone notices, you'll be in the Cayman Islands." "What about the estate?" Brianni asked. "Can we sell it before Coulter forecloses?" "Not legally," Leland admitted. "It's in a family trust, has been since Aliner's death. The terms are complicated." I poured tea with steady hands, but inside I was celebrating. Because I knew those trust terms by heart, I'd written them in my previous life. The estate couldn't be sold. It couldn't be mortgaged beyond a certain amount. And if the current trustees, Merrick and Brianni, were found guilty of financial malfeasance, control automatically transferred to the next heir. Which would be me. "What about embezzlement charges?" Merrick asked nervously. "If the board investigates the missing funds." "They won't," Leland assured him. "I've made sure the auditors are cooperative, just sign here and here." Merrick signed. I watched carefully as the pen moved across the paper, nodding the account numbers, the amounts, the dates. Every detail burned into my memory, both as Astrid and as Aliner, who'd had a photographic memory for numbers. I finished serving and left the room, but not before catching Leland's eyes on me. He watched me with an expression that made me want to shower. "The girl," he said as I reached the door. "How attached to her are you?" "What do you mean?" Brianni asked. "I mean if she became inconvenient, if she had an accident, would that bother you?" My blood ran cold. I kept walking, but my hands shook so badly I almost dropped the tea tray. "She's family," Merrick said, but his tone was considering. "It would look bad." "Not if it was clearly an accident," Leland pressed. "A fall down the stairs, a slip in the bath. These things happen with children." I reached the kitchen and set down the tray before my trembling hands could betray me. They were discussing murdering me like it was a minor business decision. Just like they'd murdered my parents. The certainty hit me like lightning. Aliner's memories mixed with Astrid's observations, and suddenly I knew. The car crash hadn't been an accident. Merrick had arranged it because my mother, Aliner's favorite grandchild, had been about to expose his financial crimes. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. They'd killed my parents. They were stealing my inheritance, and now they were planning to kill me too. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act. That night, I used the secret passages to reach the forbidden attic. No one had been up there since Aliner's death 5 years ago. The family considered it creepy and useless, just old furniture and dusty portraits. But I knew better. The attic was Aliner's private sanctuary. I picked the lock on the door with a hairpin, another skill Aliner had possessed and I'd apparently inherited, and slipped inside. Moonlight streamed through the small window, illuminating rows of covered furniture and stacked boxes. I moved through them with purpose, heading for the far wall. There, hidden behind a moth-eaten curtain, was the portrait. I pulled the curtain aside and gasped. It was Aliner at age 10, the same dark hair, the same gray eyes, the same stubborn chin. We could have been twins. I stared at my own face looking back at me from 80 years ago, and something inside me settled. This wasn't madness. This wasn't fever dreams. I really was a leaner vein, returned to reclaim what was mine. I searched the area around the portrait and found what I was looking for, a hidden compartment in the frame. Inside was a sealed envelope with, "For my return," written in a leaner's elegant handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. My dear self, if you're reading this, then my theories about reincarnation were correct. Welcome back. The vault beneath the estate contains everything I built, the real fortune, not the scraps I left in the public accounts. I designed it to open only for me, knowing that greedy relatives would try to steal it. The key is not an object. The key is you, your biometric signature, your voice, your essence. But be careful. The veins are vipers. They killed your mother in this life, my precious granddaughter, just as they would have killed me if I hadn't died of old age first. Trust no one but Cashin Burke. He was loyal to me until the end. If he still lives, he will help you. Reclaim what is yours. Rebuild what they destroyed. With love across lifetimes, Eleanor. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my dress. Cashin Burke. I remembered him from Eleanor's memories, a young businessman she'd mentored, one of the few people she'd trusted completely. If he was still alive, he'd be in his late 40s now, and he'd be my only ally in this fight. I heard footsteps on the stairs below. Someone was coming. I quickly hid the portrait and slipped into the shadows just as the attic door creaked open. Meadow entered the attic, Merrick's 15-year-old daughter. She carried a flashlight and a cruel smile. "I know you're up here, little Maid," she called out in a sing-song voice. "I saw you sneak upstairs." I stayed perfectly still in my hiding spot between two wardrobes. Meadow walked through the attic, kicking boxes and pulling sheets off furniture. "My father says we might have to get rid of you soon. He says you're becoming a liability." She was trying to scare me. It was working. "I think it's a great idea," Meadow continued. "You're creepy, always watching, always listening like you know something." She stopped near my hiding place, too near. "I found your book, by the way," she said. "That stupid fairy tale book your mother gave you, the only thing you had left of her." My heart clenched. That book was my most precious possession. "I ripped it apart," Meadow said gleefully. "Tore every single page. It's in the fireplace now, burning." Something inside me snapped. I stepped out of the shadows and looked Meadow directly in the eyes. But I wasn't looking at her as Astrid, the frightened 10-year-old. I was looking at her as Eleanor, the woman who'd built empires and crushed rivals. "You destroyed my book," I said, and my voice was wrong. Too old, too cold. "That was a mistake." Meadow's smile faltered. She took a step back. I took a step forward. "Do you know what I did to people who destroyed my things?" I asked, and Eleanor's memories provided the answer. "I destroyed their lives, systematically, completely. I was very good at it." "You're just a kid," Meadow whispered, but her voice shook. "Am I?" I tilted my head, and I knew my expression was terrifying because Meadow went pale. "Or am I the woman who signed your birth certificate, who approved your trust fund, who owns the house you sleep in?" Meadow dropped her flashlight and ran. I heard her feet pounding down the stairs, heard her screaming for her father. I picked up the flashlight calmly. I'd probably pay for that confrontation later, but it had been worth it to see genuine fear in Meadow's eyes. The veins needed to understand that I wasn't helpless anymore. I was done being their victim. The next morning, I snuck into the estate library while everyone was at breakfast. The computer was old, but it worked. I had 20 minutes before someone would notice I wasn't cleaning. I logged into a secure email service using one of Eleanor's old accounts, one I knew still existed because she'd set it up to never expire. I typed carefully. "Cashin. The roses are blooming early this year. The garden needs its rightful keeper. Eve." It was a code Eleanor and Cashin had shared. He'd know exactly what it meant, that Eleanor was back somehow, and that the Vane estate needed help. I hit send and cleared the browser history just as I heard footsteps approaching. I was back in the hallway with a dust cloth when Brianni found me. The attic, she demanded. What were you doing up there last night? Cleaning, Aunt Brianni. Meadow says you threatened her. I didn't threaten anyone, I said truthfully. I'd simply stated facts. Brianni grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. No food for 2 days. Maybe hunger will teach you some respect. She shoved me toward the servants' quarters. And you're not to leave your room except for assigned chores. Understood? Yes, Aunt Brianni. She stormed off. I waited until she was gone, then smiled. No food for 2 days. She thought that would break me. But Aliner's memories showed me secret passages to the kitchen, to the old pantries, to storage rooms no one had used in decades. I'd eat better than they would. That night, after the house went dark, I used the passages to reach the old butler's pantry. It hadn't been opened in years, but I knew exactly where it was and how to open the hidden door. Inside, covered in dust but still intact, were dozens of canned goods, dried fruits, and other preserved foods. Aliner had stocked this pantry during World War II and never bothered to clean it out. I ate peaches from a can that was older than my parents had been, and they tasted like victory. While I ate, I explored deeper into the pantry. Aliner's memories guided me to a loose brick in the wall. Behind it was a small metal box. I opened it and gasped. Gold coins, dozens of them, each one worth thousands of dollars. Aliner had hidden emergency funds all over the estate. This was just one cache of many. I took 3 coins and hid them in the hem of my dress, then carefully replaced the box. I'd need money soon, and this was my insurance policy. I was about to leave when I heard voices from the vent above me. The grate led directly to Merrick's study. Coulter arrives tomorrow, Merrick was saying. We need a plan. Tell him we'll have the money in a week, Leland suggested. Stall him. He won't accept that. He wants collateral or cash, now. Then we give him the girl. I froze. What? Merrick sounded shocked. Not literally, Leland clarified. But Coulter has interests, a pretty young girl as a ward, a debt forgiven. It's a transaction. My stomach turned. They were discussing selling me like property. That's insane, Merrick said, but he didn't sound as horrified as he should have. Is it? Leland pressed. She's nobody, an orphan, no one would ask questions, and Coulter is discreet. I'll think about it, Merrick finally said. I left the pantry, my hands shaking with rage and fear. Tomorrow, a man named Coulter would arrive, and Merrick might actually try to hand me over to settle his debts. I had to move faster. I had to contact Cashin tonight. Coulter arrived at noon the next day. I watched from the upstairs hallway as Merrick greeted him at the door, a tall, thin man with calculating eyes and an expensive suit. Mr. Vane, Coulter said coldly, I trust you have my money. About that, Merrick began, his voice falsely cheerful. Come into my study, let's discuss terms. But then Coulter saw me on the stairs. Who's this? He asked. Merrick's expression changed. My niece, Astrid, come down here. I descended slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I had a plan. Astrid, say hello to Mr. Coulter, Merrick instructed. He's a family friend. Hello, I said quietly, keeping my eyes down like a proper frightened child. Charming, Coulter murmured, and the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. Perhaps we could discuss arrangements, Merrick said carefully. Astrid has been a bit of a burden since her parents passed. If you knew anyone looking for a ward. I might, Coulter said, still staring at me. This was my moment. I looked up at Coulter and said, loud enough for the servants to hear, Mr. Coulter, did you know my uncle is trying to sell the estate illegally? The property is in a family trust. He has no right to mortgage it. Coulter's eyebrows rose. Merrick went pale. Astrid, he hissed, go to your room. But I continued. And he's been embezzling from the family companies. The account numbers are. Merrick grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. I said go to your room. He dragged me toward the stairs, but I'd said enough. I'd planted the seed of doubt. Coulter watched me go with an expression I couldn't read. But I'd bet anything he'd investigate my claims before handing over any more money. Merrick shoved me into my closet room and locked the door from the outside. But he didn't know about the passages, and he didn't know that while he'd been greeting Coulter, I'd slipped a note into Coulter's coat pocket. A note with Leland's embezzlement, account numbers, and the details of the illegal trust violations. Let them tear each other apart. 2 days later, I heard Merrick shouting in his study. Who told Coulter about the trust? He's demanding an audit. He's calling in lawyers. Calm down, Briani said. We'll fix this. How? The vault. We need to open that damn vault. I smiled from my hiding spot in the walls. My note to Coulter had worked. That afternoon, while pretending to clean the morning room, I overheard Briani talking to Meadow. Your grandmother was eccentric, Briani was saying. She supposedly left clues about the vault hidden around the estate. Find them. Meadow spent the rest of the day tearing through Aliner's old belongings. I watched her from the shadows, amused. The next morning, I made my move. I found a small wooden box hidden in the library bookshelf. I brought it to Merrick with wide, innocent eyes. Uncle Merrick, I found this while dusting. He snatched it from my hands. Inside was a tarnished brass key. This is it, he breathed, the matriarch's key. He ran to the basement, Briani and Leland following. I trailed behind, playing the curious child. The vault door was massive, solid steel set into the foundation. Merrick inserted the key into the lock with trembling hands. It turned. The door opened. Inside was a small room containing a single metal box. Merrick opened it eagerly, then froze. Inside weren't gold bars or stock certificates. Instead, there were photographs, dozens of them. Photographs of Merrick's father, Aliner's son, with various mistresses. Bank statements showing his embezzlement. Love letters to women who weren't his wife. What is this? Merrick whispered. I stepped forward. It's grandmother Aliner's insurance, I said calmly. She kept evidence on everyone, just in case. Merrick whirled on me. You knew about this. I'm starting to remember things, I said, which was technically true. Grandmother told my mother secrets. My mother told me. Then where's the real vault? He demanded. I don't know, I lied. But grandmother always said the truth would come to those who deserved it. Merrick looked like he wanted to hit me, but Leland put a hand on his shoulder. The girl might be useful after all, the lawyer said thoughtfully. She might remember more, with the right encouragement. The way he looked at me made my blood run cold. I needed Cashin to respond soon, or I'd be in serious danger. That night, I snuck to the library computer again. There was a response to my email. EV. The roses are beautiful when tended properly. I'm on my way. CB. Relief flooded through me. Cashin was coming. But I had another problem. The servants were watching me. Opal, the head housekeeper who'd worked at the estate for 30 years, had been observing me with increasingly curious eyes. She'd known Aliner personally. The next morning, she cornered me in the laundry room. You walk like her, Opal said quietly. You hold your head the same way. You even organize the linen closet using her exact system. I froze, my hands full of towels. I don't know what you're talking about, Opal. Don't you? She stepped closer. I've worked here since Mrs. Aliner was 60. I watched you grow up as little Astrid, but lately, you're different. You move through this house like you own it, like you know every secret. I met her eyes. Maybe I do. Opal stared at me for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked me. She bowed her head slightly. Welcome home, ma'am, she whispered. You believe me. Mrs. Aliner used to talk about reincarnation, about souls returning to unfinished business. I thought she was just philosophical, but now, she looked at me with wonder. How is this possible? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm here and I need help. Anything, Opal said immediately. The family has been destroying everything Mrs. Aliner built. It's been breaking my heart. Then help me take it back. From that moment, I had an ally. Opal began slipping me real food instead of scraps. She gave me information about Merrick's activities. She even managed to smuggle a burner phone to me so I could communicate without the family knowing. Everything was falling into place. A week later, Brianni called me to the sitting room. She wore a fake smile that set off every alarm bell. "Astrid, dear, we've been thinking about your education." I said nothing, waiting. "You've been through so much trauma," she continued. "We think it might be best if you went to a special school, a place that helps troubled children." A reform school. They were trying to get rid of me. "When?" I asked quietly. "Tomorrow," Merrick said, entering the room. "We've already made the arrangements." I looked between them, letting my eyes fill with tears. "But I'll be good, I promise. Please don't send me away." "It's for your own good," Brianni said, but she looked pleased by my distress. I ran to my room, sobbing convincingly. Once inside with the door locked, I dried my eyes and pulled out the burner phone. I had one night to prepare my parting gift. I spent hours working with Opal, who brought me her phone and access to the estate's old security system. Elinor had installed cameras throughout the house decades ago, back when such technology was new. The family thought they were broken. They weren't. They'd been recording everything for years. I found what I was looking for around midnight. Security footage from 6 months ago, from a camera hidden in Brianni's private sitting room. Brianni, drunk and talking to Leland. "The breaks were cut perfectly," she was saying. "The accident looked completely natural." "And you're sure the parents didn't tell the girl anything about the trust?" Leland asked. "They're dead before they could. She knows nothing." My hands shook as I copied the file. I'd suspected the truth, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a knife to the chest. They'd murdered my parents, admitted it, on camera. I uploaded the video to a cloud server, then sent the link to 5 different addresses. The local police, the state police, the FBI, an investigative journalist I knew from Elinor's memories, and Cashin. Then I encrypted the server, so only someone with Elinor's passwords could delete it. Tomorrow, when they tried to ship me off to reform school, the truth would explode across the internet. I slept peacefully for the first time in months. The next morning, Merrick came to collect me for the drive to the reform school, but his face was red with fury. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I don't understand, Uncle Merrick." "The video, the one you uploaded, how did you?" "What video?" I asked innocently. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me. "I know you did this. I found evidence. How do I delete it?" "I don't know how to use computers," I lied. "Liar!" He raised his hand to hit me, but Opal appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Vane," she said firmly, "the police are at the door." Merrick went pale. He released me and ran downstairs. I followed slowly, Opal beside me. 2 detectives stood in the foyer. They'd seen the video. They wanted to ask questions about my parents' death. "This is harassment," Leland was saying, having arrived minutes earlier. "A doctored video from a disgruntled child." "We'll determine if it's doctored," one detective said. "In the meantime, we'll be investigating. Don't leave town." They left, but the damage was done. I could see it in Merrick's eyes. The fear. The realization that I wasn't harmless anymore. "You," he said, pointing at me. "You think you're clever, but you just made this worse for yourself." "Did I?" I asked. "Because now the police are watching. Anything that happens to me will look very suspicious." Brianni made a strangled sound. "She's right, we can't touch her now." "Then we use her," Merrick decided. "She knows more than she's saying. About the vault, about Elinor's secrets, we make her talk." But before they could do anything, my burner phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. "Outside, car ready, come now. CB." Cashin was here. "I need to use the bathroom," I said. "No," Merrick snapped. "You're not leaving my sight." But Opal intervened. "Sir, she's a child. You can't deny her basic needs." Merrick hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Fine, 5 minutes. Opal, go with her." We walked to the downstairs bathroom. As soon as we were out of sight, Opal whispered, "There's a car outside the garden gate. Mr. Cashin's man. Can you get there?" "Yes," I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for everything." "Go," she urged, "before they announce the gala and it's too late." Continue. 9:41 p.m. Gala. Tomorrow night. They're hosting it to announce Mr. Merrick's succession as head of the family. They're going to make it official. I felt rage burn through me. Not if I have anything to say about it. I slipped out the bathroom window, small enough for a child, too small for an adult to follow. I dropped into the garden and ran. Behind me, I heard Merrick bellowing my name. I reached the gate and scrambled over it, dropping into the waiting car's backseat. "Drive," I gasped. The car took off. I looked back to see Merrick and Brianni running out of the house, but we were already gone. "Astrid," the driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Burke is waiting for you." 15 minutes later, we pulled up to a luxury hotel. The driver led me to a penthouse suite. A man in his late 40s opened the door. He had kind eyes and graying hair. When he saw me, his face went pale. "Dear God," Cashin Burke whispered, "you look exactly like her." "That's because I am her," I said, walking past him into the suite. "We have a lot to discuss and not much time. They're planning a gala tomorrow." Cashin closed the door slowly. "I don't understand," the email said, "but you're a child." "I'm 10, I agreed. "I'm also a leaner vein. I have all her memories. I know things only she would know." "That's impossible." "Is it? Your mother's last words to you were find joy in small moments. You were holding her hand in the hospital. Elinor was there. You cried." Cashin staggered backward and sat down heavily on the couch. "No one knows that. No one." "Elinor knew. I am Elinor." I sat across from him. "And I need your help to take back what's mine." He stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he knelt before me. "What do you need, Mrs. Vane?" I spent the evening telling Cashin everything. The abuse, the murder of my parents, the embezzlement, the gala tomorrow where Merrick planned to declare himself the official head of the Vane estate. "He can't do that legally," Cashin said. "The trust documents are clear." "Do you have a copy of the real will?" I asked. "The one Elinor filed." "I do, in my safe at the office." "Good, because we're going to need it tomorrow." I stood and walked to the window. "But first, I need to open the vault." "The vault everyone thinks is a myth." "It's very real, and it's mine." I turned to face him. "Can you access the estate's blueprints, the original ones from Elinor's construction?" "Probably. Why?" "Because the vault isn't where they think it is. The one in the basement is a decoy. The real vault is hidden in a place no one would think to look." I remembered from Elinor's memories exactly where it was, behind a seemingly ordinary wall in what was now Merrick's private study. Ironic that he'd been sitting 10 feet from a fortune for years. "I need to get back into the house," I said. "Tomorrow night during the gala." Cashin looked worried. "That's dangerous." "Everything about this is dangerous, but I'm not scared anymore." I met his eyes. "I've built an empire once. I can do it again." "You're 10 years old." "I'm 90, I corrected. "I just happen to be in a 10-year-old body." He laughed despite himself. "You really are her. Elinor always did have nerves of steel." We planned late into the night. Cashin would attend the gala as a legitimate guest. He still had connections in society. He'd bring lawyers and the real will. And I would open the vault. But first, I needed to remember one more crucial detail from Elinor's memories. "The vault requires biometric authentication," I said. "Handprint, retinal scan, and a voice command." "Can you provide all three?" "The handprint and retinal scan, yes. The voice," I trailed off, troubled. "I'm not sure if my child's voice will register. Elinor was an old woman when she programmed the system." "Then we'll modify the sensors," Cashin said. "I know people, we can make this work." "We have to," I said firmly, "because tomorrow night I'm taking back everything." The next day, Cashin arranged for a tech specialist to meet us. A young woman named Sarah who asked no questions and worked miracles with electronics. If the vault uses older biometric technology, I can reprogram it to recognize your current signature, Sarah explained. But I'll need access to the vault itself. That's the problem, I admitted. I need to get into the house undetected. During a gala, Sarah raised an eyebrow, bold. I'm small, I said. I can get in through the service entrance while everyone's distracted. Cashin didn't like it, but he agreed. I'll make sure you have backup. Some of my security team will be at the gala as guests, if anything goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, I interrupted. I know that house better than anyone. I designed it. That afternoon, Opal called my burner phone. They're frantic, she reported. They've called the police saying you ran away. They're pretending to be concerned relatives. And the gala. Still happening. They're going through with it despite everything. They're desperate. She paused. Astrid, be careful. Mr. Merrick is talking about having you declared mentally unstable if he gets custody again. He won't, I promised. After tonight, he'll be lucky if he's not in prison. I dressed carefully for the infiltration. Dark clothes, soft shoes. My hair pulled back, I looked like a shadow. Cashin drove me to the estate just as the sun was setting. Guests were arriving in expensive cars, women in glittering gowns, men in tuxedos. Remember, Cashin said, you have 1 hour. Then I'm causing a distraction to draw everyone away from the study. I'll be done before then. I slipped out of the car and made my way to the servants' entrance. Just as I expected, it was open. Caterers were rushing back and forth. I walked in like I belonged there, just another worker in dark clothes. No one gave me a second glance. I was inside. I made my way through the familiar passages to Merrick's study. I could hear the gala in full swing, music, laughter, the clink of champagne glasses. They were celebrating. They thought they'd won. I picked the lock on the study door, Eleanor's skills, Astrid's small fingers, and slipped inside. The room looked the same as it had in my memories. The massive desk, the bookshelves, the portrait of Eleanor on the wall. I walked to the western wall and pressed on a specific panel. There was a soft click. The wall swung inward, revealing a small elevator. I stepped inside and descended into darkness. The elevator stopped. I emerged into a small chamber lit by emergency lighting. And there, filling the entire room, was the vault. It was enormous, not just a safe, but an entire reinforced room. The door was solid steel with an electronic panel beside it. I approached and placed my small hand on the scanner. It glowed blue, reading my palm print. Match confirmed. Next, the retinal scanner. I leaned close, letting it scan my eyes. Match confirmed. Finally, the voice command. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. Eleanor Marguerite Vane. Authorization code. The truth always prevails. The system processed for a long moment. I held my breath. Match confirmed. Voice pattern AUTHNTICATD. The massive door swung open. Inside was everything Eleanor had promised. Paintings worth millions. Gold bars stacked neatly. Stock certificates for companies that were now tech giants. Documents proving ownership of properties worldwide. But most importantly, there was a file labeled Trust Documents, Original. I opened it and found Eleanor's real will. The one that disinherited Merrick's father for his crimes. The one that specified the estate should pass to the next generation worthy of the Vane name. There was also a letter. To whoever opens this vault. If you're reading this, you've passed all my tests. You have my DNA, my knowledge, and my determination. Whether you're my literal reincarnation or a distant descendant who inherited my gifts, you are the rightful heir. Use this fortune wisely. Rebuild what corruption destroyed. Help those who cannot help themselves. The Vane name should mean something good. Make it so. Eleanor. I folded the documents carefully and tucked them into my jacket. Then I loaded several pieces of the most valuable artwork and gold into a bag Cashin had given me. I was about to leave when I heard voices upstairs. "Someone's been in here," Merrick's voice panicked. They'd discovered the open panel. I had to move fast. I scrambled back into the elevator just as I heard footsteps on the stairs. The door closed and I shot upward. I emerged in the study to find Merrick and Leland staring at the open wall panel. "What is this?" Merrick demanded, spotting me. How did you?" "Hello, Uncle Merrick," I said calmly, stepping out of the elevator. "Looking for the vault." His eyes went to the bag I carried. "What did you take?" "What's mine?" He lunged for me, but I was faster. I darted around the desk and ran for the door. "Stop her," Merrick shouted. Leland tried to grab me, but I ducked under his arms. I yanked open the study door and ran straight into the gala. The ballroom went silent as I appeared, a small child in dark clothes, carrying a bag, being chased by the host. Cashin stood near the entrance. When he saw me, he nodded and pulled out his phone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying over the crowd. "I have an announcement. The real owner of the Vane estate has just arrived." Everyone stared at me. Merrick grabbed my arm. "This is absurd. She's a child, a disturbed orphan." "She's Eleanor Vane's rightful heir," Cashin countered. He held up documents. "I have the original will, the real trust documents, all proving that Merrick Vane has no legal claim to this estate." The crowd murmured. Phones came out. People started recording. Brianni appeared, her face a mask of fury. "This is a setup. The girl is being manipulated." "Am I?" I asked, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Or am I finally taking back what you stole when you murdered my parents?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. "She's lying," Merrick snarled. "There's video evidence," I said clearly. "Security footage of Brianni confessing to the break tampering. I've already sent it to the authorities." "Impossible," Brianni said, but her voice shook. "We destroyed those cameras years ago." "You destroyed the obvious ones," I agreed. "But Eleanor Vane installed dozens of hidden cameras throughout this house. She never trusted family members, for good reason, apparently." The crowd was pressing closer now, fascinated by the drama. "This is my house," Merrick insisted. "I've run it for 5 years." "You've run it into the ground," I corrected. "You've embezzled millions, mortgaged properties you had no right to touch, violated every term of the family trust." "Prove it," he challenged. So I did. I climbed onto a chair so everyone could see me clearly. From my bag, I pulled out documents. "These are the original trust documents," I announced. "They specify that the Vane estate can only be controlled by someone who maintains the family values of integrity, charity, and financial responsibility." I held up another paper. "This is a forensic audit showing Merrick has embezzled over $15 million from family companies." Gasps from the crowd. Merrick went pale. "This," I held up another document, "is a copy of the offshore account where he's been hiding the stolen money." "How did you get that?" Leland demanded. "Eleanor Vane kept meticulous records," I said simply. "I have access to all of them." I pulled out my final piece of evidence, a photo from the vault showing Merrick's father with one of his mistresses, along with bank statements showing his theft. "The corruption goes back generations," I said. "Eleanor knew. She documented everything. She designed the trust to prevent people like you from destroying her legacy." I looked at Merrick directly. "You failed every test she set. You were never meant to inherit." "And you think you are," Merrick sneered. "A 10-year-old child." "I think the rightful heir will reveal themselves when the time is right," I said carefully. I wasn't ready to claim Eleanor's identity publicly. "But that person isn't you." Sirens wailed outside. The police, arriving in response to the security footage I'd released. Merrick and Brianni tried to run, but Cashin's security team blocked the exits. The police entered and arrested them both. The charges: embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. The gala guests watched in shocked silence as the Vanes were led away in handcuffs. I stood on my chair, holding the documents that proved their crimes, and felt Aliner's satisfaction mixing with Astrid's relief. It was over. The aftermath was chaos. Lawyers descended on the estate. The police investigated. The media went wild with the story of the corrupt relatives and the orphan who exposed them. But through it all, I had Cashin and his team protecting me. A judge reviewed the trust documents and the evidence. She interviewed me extensively, clearly skeptical that a 10-year-old could have orchestrated everything. "How did you know where to find these documents?" she asked during one session. "My mother told me stories," I said, sticking to a script Cashin and I had prepared. About my great-great-grandmother Aliner, about the secrets in the house. I just listened. It was close enough to the truth. The judge also reviewed the video evidence of Brianni's confession and the forensic audit of Merrick's embezzlement. The case against them was airtight. 6 weeks later, the judge ruled. Merrick and Brianni were officially removed as trustees. Their assets were frozen. They'd face criminal trials. As for me, the judge appointed Cashin as my guardian until I turned 18, and the Vane estate was placed in a trust that I would inherit when I came of age. "This is highly irregular," the judge said during the final hearing, "but the evidence is clear. The child has more right to this property than the adults who abused her." I nodded respectfully, playing the role of the grateful orphan. But inside, Aliner was smiling. Meadow came to see me a week after the ruling. She looked smaller than I remembered, less threatening without her parents' power behind her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for being cruel to you, for burning your book." I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me, the Astrid part, wanted to stay angry, but Aliner's memories reminded me that Meadow was a victim too, raised by terrible people. "Thank you," I said finally. "I accept your apology." "What's going to happen to me?" she asked. "Without my parents?" "You'll go live with your aunt in California," I told her. It had already been arranged. "You'll have a trust fund for college. You'll have a chance to be better than they were." "Why would you do that? I was horrible to you." "Because you're 15, I said simply. "You can still change. You can still choose to be good." She left crying, but I thought they were the right kind of tears, the kind that might lead to growth. Leland, the corrupt lawyer, went to prison. He'd been involved in too many illegal schemes to escape justice. Coulter, the debt collector, provided evidence against Merrick in exchange for immunity. He claimed he'd never actually intended to take me as payment for the debt, though I wasn't sure I believed him. The estate employees, Opal and the others, received generous raises. I made sure of it. And slowly, I began the work of restoration. Over the following months, I worked with Cashin to restructure the Vane companies. We fired corrupt board members. We implemented new ethical guidelines. We donated to charities Aliner had supported. I couldn't make major decisions as a minor, but I could advise. And Cashin listened to every word. "You're remarkable," he told me one afternoon as we reviewed financial reports in the estate library. "Sometimes I forget you're 10 years old." "Sometimes I forget too," I admitted. "How much of you is Aliner?" he asked carefully. "And how much is Astrid?" I thought about it. More of both every day. I have her memories and her knowledge, but I also have Astrid's experiences, her pain, her perspective. "And which one am I talking to right now?" "Both," I said. "We're the same person now. The past and the present merged." He nodded slowly. "Aliner would be proud of both of you." The criminal trials happened that spring. Merrick and Brianni were both convicted. Merrick got 20 years for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit murder. Brianni got 25 because the brake tampering was her idea. I didn't attend the trials. I didn't need to see them punished. I just needed them gone. Instead, I focused on the future. I turned the guest wing of the estate into a home for orphans, children like me who'd lost their parents and needed a safe place. I hired counselors and teachers. I made sure every child had their own room, good food, and people who cared. The Vane Foundation, I called it, for children who deserve better. Opal managed the household with the same efficiency she'd always had, but now she smiled more. She'd been freed from serving tyrants. And me, I went back to school, a good school where I was just another student. My classmates had no idea who I really was or what I'd been through. I got to be a kid again, at least partially. On the 1-year anniversary of Aliner's awakening in Astrid's body, I stood in the vault surrounded by the treasures Aliner had accumulated. I'd been coming down here regularly, cataloging everything, planning how to use it. Some of the artwork would go to museums. Some of the money would fund the orphanage. The rest would be invested wisely, growing the fortune for future generations. But today, I'd come for something specific. In the back of the vault was a locked box I hadn't opened yet. It required a 7-digit code that Aliner had never written down anywhere. But I knew what it was, Astrid's birthday. I entered the numbers, and the box opened. Inside was a letter addressed to my future self. Aliner, if you're reading this, then my theories about consciousness and reincarnation were correct. You've come back. Welcome home. You're probably young again, possibly a child like I was when I started building this empire. Good. You'll need that energy for what comes next. I've left you everything you need to rebuild. Not just money and property, but knowledge. All my journals are in this vault, all my business contacts, all my secrets. But more importantly, I've left you a mission. Make the Vane name mean something good again. I failed with my own children. They became greedy and corrupt. They forgot that wealth is a responsibility, not a right. But we have a second chance. Use it wisely. Build something lasting. Help people. Create beauty. Leave the world better than you found it. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember, we've done impossible things before. We can do them again. With love across time, Aliner. P.S. I hid a gift for you in the left panel. Something to remind you who you really are. I opened the left panel and found a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, Aliner's favorite, a simple band with her initials engraved inside. I slipped it onto my finger. It was too big for my small hand, but I'd grow into it. Just like I'd grow into Aliner's legacy. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of the Vane estate and looked out over the grounds. The gardens were blooming. The orphanage was thriving. The foundation was funding scholarships and community programs. I was 15 now, old enough to take on more responsibility. Cashin had taught me everything he knew about business. I'd studied Aliner's journals cover to cover. And I'd made my own contributions too. Using Astrid's modern perspective and Aliner's experience, I'd found new ways to grow the fortune and help more people. Opal joined me on the balcony, bringing tea like she had for Aliner all those years ago. You've done well, Miss Astrid, she said. Both of you. We had good teachers, I replied. Aliner built the foundation. You and Cashin helped me rebuild it. What's next? She asked. I smiled. College in 3 years, business school, then taking over the companies officially. You've already been running them unofficially for years, Opal pointed out. True, but I want to do it right. Earn my place. Prove I deserve this, not just because of who I was, but because of who I am now. She nodded approvingly. Aliner would be proud. Aliner is proud, I corrected gently, because I am her, just evolved. That evening, Cashin visited with news. Merrick's parole hearing was denied, he reported. He'll serve the full 20 years. Good, I said without hesitation. Do you ever regret it? Cashin asked. Exposing them, you could have stayed hidden, let them destroy themselves. No, I said firmly. They killed my parents, they abused me. They would have killed me too if I'd given them the chance. They deserved everything they got. And if they ever get out? I looked at him calmly. By then, I'll be an adult, legally in control of everything. And I'll have spent years building goodwill, creating jobs, helping communities. They'll be convicted criminals trying to fight someone beloved by thousands. You've thought this through. I've had 80+ years to learn how to plan ahead, I reminded him with a slight smile. He laughed, point taken. After he left, I walked through the house, my house. Every room held memories now, Alina's from decades ago and Astrid's more recent ones. I passed the closet that had been my prison. It was now a reading nook for the orphans. I passed the attic where I'd first found Alina's portrait. It was now an art studio. I passed the study where I'd opened the vault. It was now my office, where I planned the Foundation's future. Every horrible place had been transformed into something beautiful. That's what I did, what Alina had always done, take broken things and make them whole. I ended my tour in the vault, standing among the treasures that had started this whole journey. We did it. I whispered to Alina's ghost, or maybe just to the part of me that was still her. We took back what was ours. We made it mean something good. I could almost hear her voice in my head, proud and satisfied. We always do, dear. We always do. I climbed back upstairs, locked the vault, and went to dinner with the orphans. 20 children who now had a home because I'd fought back. My name is Astrid Vane. I'm 15 years old. I'm also Alina Vane, returned to finish what I started. I'm the little girl they treated like a maid, who remembered she built the kingdom they tried to steal. And I'm never going to let anyone take it from me again.